Writing a book is a horrible, exhausting struggle, like a long bout of some painful illness. One would never undertake such a thing if one were not driven by some demon whom one can neither resist nor understand. George Orwell is one of my favorite writers, and for the last 13 months, I was driven on by the book demon. And it is true, I could not resist nor understand him. Writing a book is kind of an insane thing to do, even holding it in my hands. I'm like, how did I get here? I spent 400 hours during my senior year of college last year writing about every lesson I learned into a 100-page guidebook. In this video, I want to share some of the lessons I learned from my first book, as well as what I would change and advice for anyone thinking of doing a similar thing. This video is also more for like my future self to look back on too. I'm going to be starting with the beginning and ideation part of the book, and then the middle long writing process, and then finally the end publication, launch, and marketing. Starting out with the idea to write a book. I only had 5 months of writing experience before I decided to write a book. I joined an online course called Rite of Passage, became obsessed with writing like nonfiction essays on Substack. And then starting my senior year of college, I had a really grateful opportunity. I landed my dream job offer the week before classes even started. So I literally had my whole senior year to dedicate it to anything I wanted to. And I talked to someone that was already working full time. I was like, okay, what should I do with like this year of total freedom? And he said to take one big risk with it. He said that during his senior year of college, he started a company and then ended up selling it before starting his job. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So I let this question of like, what should my one big risk this year be, sit in the back of my mind for about 2 weeks. And I was playing around with these ideas like, oh, I'll post like YouTube video essays, or I'll like work on the business side of YouTubers. But then one weekend, as I was biking home from church, it's only a 10-minute bike ride, but during those 2 miles, just like the entire outline of a book formed in my head out of nowhere. And I even got the initial title of it, which was Continuous Calling, a New Philosophy of Work and Life for College Students. I imagined interviewing people and creating this whole career guide of like, how do you know what to do with your life and what are the principles for figuring that out in college. The book ended up being completely different, but that was just the one idea of like, oh my gosh, I think I need to write a book this year. I couldn't get it out of my head. It was crazy because I had never considered writing a book. I had always thought like, oh, that'd be something cool to do when I'm like 30, but instead, in the meantime, I should just do like shorter Substack essays. Like that's like the responsible way to develop writing skills. But I'm kind of like, fuck it. So after that bike ride, I parked my bike outside my dorm building and then literally ran upstairs and for the next 2 hours manically scribbled post-it notes, stuck them along my closet wall. I got this like 6-section initial rough outline that was completely different from what the actual book ended up being again, but it gave me a skeleton to be able to start writing or start seeing like, okay, what are the main points here? The main premise in the book is basically how can you follow your curiosity and balance self-discovery in college while also achieving your career goals and getting like a good outcome. And it stemmed from my own story of like doing everything the opposite of what I was supposed to do in college, but still landing the same job that when I started college, I thought I would have to like sacrifice my college experience to get. So the book is answering that question of like, how do you get both? I never for a second seriously considered doing traditional publishing just because I knew that the book was going to be this very limited 1-year container my senior year. And I honestly didn't want to have to waste time worrying about like getting an agent or learning about the industry. I just wanted to move fast and spend as much time writing as I could. Early in the process, one of my writing friends, who actually self-published his own book, All Outcomes Are Acceptable by Chris James, shout out to him. He randomly messaged me. He's like, hey, Jamie, I'm starting doing writing coaching. Like, I think you'd be a good client. Do you want to set up a call? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. You messaged me because literally like 2 weeks ago, I started writing a book and I would love your support with it. Without Chris, I think maybe the book still would have been written, but it definitely would not have looked anything close to it is, and I would not have improved as a writer without just like the accountability and support and feedback he gave me. He was easily like the biggest investment, and I would say if you're getting prepared, especially to self-publish a book, and it's one of your goals to become as good of a writer as possible, that allocating a significant budget to learn from people farther ahead of you is 100% worth it. I paid him a little over $1,000. We met twice a month during the whole drafting phase of my book. I was literally always scared to share my draft with him because I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's not polished. There are all these things wrong with it. But after every time we would work together, we would like take turns like reading the part out loud, and I would be able to see like, okay, there's the writing, but what's like the substance underneath the writing and what's like the actual story and message that I want to get across. Chris helped me a lot with storytelling and realizing that as a reader, it's really boring to just have concepts explained to you, which is what my book was at first. Like, oh, these are all these career principles, but instead the book really formed into storytelling, and instead it's like 7 of the most impactful lessons about like career and education and fulfillment and things throughout college. The outline phase was honestly a lot of fun because it was very exploratory and I was just writing random stuff with zero pressure because just in my head I was trying to get clear about what the book was even about. I think my advice would be is to just like choose a random outline or a direction and just like get started running towards it because genuinely throughout like the 6-month drafting process, the outline changed every single month. And then that's how this, which is like the most essential messages, was born through all of that cutting and cultivation and exploring. All right, and now section 2, which is the messy middle, the actual drafting process. This is the part where I realized that I actually went through like 3 different book ideas and outlines in my head, and I scrapped 2 of them before arriving to the final version. So at first, the book started out as like kind of a tactical career guide, but all throughout the writing process, again, I was a senior in college, I was an RA of like 150 freshmen. Low-key in the back of my head, like every single conversation I was having with anyone was like field research for the book, and I would like test little ideas or like see what are their common like thoughts and doubts and questions to know what college students are thinking and like put that in the book. But I realized that by writing a career guide, like it didn't actually help students if they didn't know where they were going. So a lot of times I would like talk to students and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to optimize everything to get this job in like consulting or this job in finance." And I realized I didn't really want to help people do that. Like I would rather help students figure out where where do you want to go instead of how do you get to some place. So then the second version of the book kind of turned it into like personal memoir of like shifting from a place of external validation to internal validation. And I wrote like that for a month or two, but then I didn't feel like it offered a ton of value to the readers. And so the third version of the book, which is the one I landed on, was more of like a tactical blend of, again, how do you balance like curiosity and self-discovery in college with also like traditional success. The drafting took a ton of time. This was the first year in college where I never worked a part-time job because I intentionally took the financial hit of like, okay, instead of working for someone else for 15 hours a week, I'm going to spend those 15 hours a week like working on myself and writing this book. And I'm fortunate that I was in the position to be able to do that and like invest in this project. And I also took a lighter course load. Like I literally dropped the screenwriting class I was in because it was kind of annoying and it took too much time from writing the book. Every day, even on top of class, I would be spending like 2 to 3 hours consistently writing. And the discipline muscle in that is like honestly the same kind of as like athletic discipline of like, okay, I'm just going to show up to train every day. And even if it feels bad, I was able to trust that like it will feel good eventually, and I was usually able to hit like that flow state in chapter drafting. Another thing that took like forever is that this book has 9 chapters. Each chapter has probably been rewritten from the ground up 3 to 5 times at least. And that's why you see it's like 400 hours of work for 9 chapters. And that's not even the actual like writing time of like typing up this book, but it's just refining the idea over and over again and then refining the delivery of that idea so it's like entertaining and engaging to someone. My chapter rewriting process would be like the number 1 would be like the messy first draft. I literally just like thought dump a few thousand words of like everything that happened, everything I can remember. I'll come back to it and read it maybe like the next day, what's actually here, and begin to start putting some structure and lessons to it. And then by the end of this second draft is usually when I would share it with my writing coach or even a friend for feedback, which I'll get to later. I did have beta readers for the book, which I'll talk about that process. And then once I shared it with someone for feedback, I would get like a totally new perspective on what the chapter is actually about or how to best deliver it. So then I would write the third draft, and then usually the third draft that I'll write is like pretty publishable. But then again, it's like continuing refining that 4 or 5 times. Even like cutting chapters, like there's so much writing I did that just got cut from the book. Like if I think this book is like 14,000 words, there's easily like 100,000 words in total volume that I wrote over the last year. That none of it was like wasted at all. Like those 86,000 trashed words were like necessary in getting to the clarity of this final draft. But yeah, it's a lot of patience and honestly is like kind of a reckless time investment. Then I finished the first draft of the book in mid-February. So from September to February for 5 months straight, that was all just getting the first draft down. The beta readers really gave me accountability because I started reaching out to friends. I had 3 beta readers. The first one was a smart high school senior who was a family friend that went to my high school. The second one was an ambitious freshman I knew, who in my head was like the exact target reader I wanted to reach. And then the third one was my senior friend, who also followed kind of her own like creative startup path through college. So 3 different but like super valuable perspectives. I just shared the book with them and I was like, hey, can you leave comments on it? Each of them were super willing to help, and then they only took like a couple days in giving back like feedback for each section. And then there were also like one-off chapters that I would send to a couple of friends who I thought would be interested in the subject matter, or I would want to hear their perspective on it. So I had a chapter on religion. I sent that to some of my Christian friends, or I had a chapter about why I stopped being a 4.0 student, who I sent to some of my freshman RA residents who are interested in entrepreneurship. Each time I sent a chapter to a friend, I would ask them 3 questions. The first one is, where were you bored? Where were you confused, and what parts did you like? Having these 3 questions as a structure was helpful because otherwise people would just be like, oh, it's good, I like the story, and like not really know what to say, or just point out like grammar feedback. I don't know if this is like controversial or kind of like a plot twist, but I would say that for future books, I'm not sure if I would use beta readers again. There were 2 issues I came up with. The first one again was like a lack of quality feedback. Whenever I shared it with non-writer friends, they'd be like, oh, this chapter is really good, like, I can't think of any way to improve it. And I'm not saying that to glaze myself because I would share the same chapter with Chris, my writing coach, and he would just, like, rip it to shreds in the best way possible, and I like getting, like, brutal feedback. And the second one is that I feel like working with beta readers made me focus more on, like, the utilitarian value of my book, like, okay, how do people interact with these ideas rather than the artistic fulfillment? And I think that's something like attention in book writing. One thing Chris told me is to think about writing the book that you would want your future self to read. So, like, what would your future self be interested in? And I honestly like using that as the lens more than, oh, what do I think like my generic target audience college student reader would like. I found that led to better artistic choices and just a book that I'm more proud of. So I sent the book to beta readers around February, March. And then I actually abandoned the book for 6 months because writing the book ended up changing me personally in a way that I honestly could have never expected and required 6 months worth of personal work and emotional excavation to be able to live with. And I wrote about this story in the conclusion of my book, sometime around finishing the first draft. I was kind of mulling over of like, okay, what's like the core premise of the book? And one day in meditation, it just came to me in 6 words: follow inner aliveness over outer validation. And I got so uncomfortable thinking about those 6 words because I realized that in a really important area of my life, I was living in contradiction to them. And I was able to follow my curiosity, my inner aliveness, and career because it ended up like leading to good things anyway. But in my sexuality, I identify as queer. And for literally my whole life, I had received like so much social stigma and like heteronormativity that I was never able to act on my desires. And I had done like little things here and there. But over the long term, I was still definitely living in shame and just a fear of like being different from everyone around me. So I literally had to stop writing the book and book an appointment with a queer therapist. And I did like so much emotional work. I'm having even like a hard time articulating it now. And I am still like deeply going through the work. Like I just moved to Chicago. It's Halloween. I'm going out later tonight. But I was able to enter like a much more emotional and like embodied and heart-centered worldview. Whereas the book I had wrote was all like centered in the intellect and like, okay, these are like the frameworks and life hacks. But I just like been introduced to like a new side of everything. And so that made the book seem kind of like boring for me to return to. Or at least that's the story I told myself in the head of like, oh, this book, it was such a sharp riff that I was like, oh, this book represents like my past, like head-centered self. And like right now, I want to write from the heart and from the body. I was still writing a ton throughout this time, even though I wasn't writing the book. I was being highly creative. I was learning a ton about AI and technology and even writing some like poetry or more like literary stuff. I started reading books on feminism. I love some of these ones. And my energy was just not feeling the book at all. So that was me for literally 6 months, is that my book rewrote me. Which leads me to the publishing process, which has been the last month of my life. So randomly in like mid-September, I got excited about the book again. I don't know what changed. I don't know if it was because I had the looming of like knowing that my full-time job was starting in November and I had to publish it before then. But I genuinely got passionate about the book again. And the first thing I did was finalize the outline. I ended up cutting a few chapters. Like I had one about what is true education and how like the school system is broken and what does true learning actually look like, that I learned honestly through like writing and the internet. I had good college courses too, but that one just never clicked, and I had been writing it since like November, and so I was like, okay, maybe if a chapter is not clicking, that's like a sign that there's not actually something here that I thought, and so I'll just cut it. The first thing I did that was so helpful is printing out the first draft copy of my book. I just spent a couple days just like totally grinding in my keyboard, putting everything together in like the worst version possible. That's a quote that's helped me a lot with publishing, is like optimize to get it wrong. Get it wrong as fast as possible, just test things. Because then you realize that things like actually don't have to be perfect, and a lot of like the perfectionism in my head was just a way of trying to like avoid a certain reaction I didn't want to get. But anyway, I threw like a random cover together on Canva Even the back copy, I just copy and pasted some of the introduction. It took a long time to learn how to format the interior of the book using Microsoft Word. If you have the budget, like definitely get a professional formatter. Throughout the publishing process, like if I was ever getting stuck, I would look over my bookshelf and pull out a book and see like, oh, what did they do for their cover? What did they do for the author bio, table of contents, interior of the book. Getting a professional formatter is definitely something I would do for future books, but this book I just wanted to get it out and I felt like I could do a good enough job on my own. And then I got this book mailed to me and I read through it all. Reading it out loud, like reading your writing out loud is so helpful. And then I was able to see the book literally so much more clearly reading it on paper. And so I just went through this and just destroyed it with a pen. I had a lot of rewrites to do. Like structurally everything was good, but there were some chapters that needed like serious work. So I think that took probably about a week and a half. And then I printed out the second copy of the book. I actually ended up breaking like the #1 rule of self-publishing, where I'm sure like you've watched a lot of self-publishing advice videos and people are always like, you need to hire a professional cover designer. And I saw that and I was like, yeah, I should, but like it costs $400. I'll have to wait a month and I can't wait a month to publish it. Because by this time, this was like early October. And then I also thought it would be kind of hard to find a good designer. I don't know if that's just my like hubris. I was like, well, what if I find an artist and they're bad and they don't really get the vision of the book? Partially also my justification was I love the How I Write podcast with David Perel. And in his interview with Jimmy Sunny, he talks about how self-published authors actually have an opportunity to not just converge to the norms of traditional publishing and how you can take it as a chance to like platform your own style and your own taste and character. And so I looked honestly at my book and I'm like, yeah, like the interior of my book is never something that would ever get traditionally published. And I'm not saying that to bash on my own writing experiences, but this is like an intensely personal book that just never would be traditionally published. And so I was like, well, if I market it to try to like look like something that was written by like Cal Newport, I feel like that almost does the book like a disservice, or it might even like dispel readers or give them the wrong expectation. And so I was like, okay, like let me just try to design my own cover. And I literally went through like 50 different cover iterations using Canva. I had Canva Pro. I think it was honestly like my procrastination tool when A, writing felt more difficult, but then also B, I was like, okay, this cover needs to be perfect or else like no one's gonna read it and everyone's gonna judge the book. And I was kind of like catastrophizing, or like the cover was like the outlet for my anxiety about the book. So I spent probably like 20 to 30 hours doing it. And I landed on this. I also went back and forth through the title a lot. Like some of the titles I was considering was like Validation, No More Straight A's, The College Contrarian, and things like that. But I felt like in my head, I was just always trying to convince myself not to do The Art of College, when The Art of College is like the book that I would feel the most proud of like saying I was the author of. Everything else felt kind of gimmicky, or like it was like a short-term marketing play, but it felt like something I would like cringe at a few years down the line when title trends have changed or whatever. And then the subtitle, like How I Landed My Dream Job by Breaking the Rules. I wanted the payoff to be clear and like attract readers of like, okay, I landed my dream job. But then by breaking the rules is kind of like the rebellious streak of it. Again, this is not cover or title advice at all. Like looking back, I would hire like a professional cover designer and title consultant to figure out how to position the book. But just because this was my first book, I was on a short timeline. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do all this myself and like learn from it. Like you don't know what you don't know. The reason you're like waffling back and forth between a decision is because you don't currently have the skills to be able to make that decision. So there will be like a future time, as long as you keep acting, that like I will have the cover design skill, I will have the title skill if that's what I choose to do. But kind of like embracing the beginner's mindset I found is pretty fun. And it's just cool to look at this book and be like, geez, I did like literally 100% of this myself. Something I also did to manage my self-doubt, and I don't know if this is toxic or not, but I would look at books like Man's Search for Meaning, one of the most famous books ever, but it's like, bro, look at this cover. Like I would literally never design a cover like that. The back is nothing special. This book, The Blank Slate, horrifying cover, bro. But these are obviously like some of the most famous books and writers of all time. And like if they can publish that, I can too. The back marketing copy I'm also really happy with. College is 4 years to figure out your life, pick the right major, get straight A's, and land your dream job. That's what everyone says. That's what Jamie planned to do. Then she got rejected from every business club in her first month of college. She could either force herself down the preset path, or she could turn the next 4 years into an experiment. What does college success really require? She experimented, broke her 4.0 GPA, quit clubs, followed curiosity over career, skipped class to see Mr. Beast, said no thanks to $140,000. The result, she landed her dream job while following her own path. Written during her senior year, The Art of College distills 4 years of lessons into 7 stories you can read in an afternoon. It is a blueprint for ambitious students who want to balance enjoyment and success. And then I added this drawing to the back just because I have like drawings throughout the book and on the cover, and I just felt like that back looked a little plain with all white. And then the author bio literally like does not matter at all. I just made it as simple as possible. Jamie graduated from WashU with a degree in finance economics. Her YouTube videos have helped over 300,000 students navigate college applications. She lives in Chicago and explores the intersection of business and creativity. I did also idea bounce like the title, subtitle, back copy with probably a dozen different people. If you can't already tell, like my creative process is very collaborative. Like I love getting out of my head and just like testing ideas with other people. And everyone told me that the title was horrible. Um okay, not horrible, but they're like the title doesn't help me get what the book is about. But I couldn't think of a better title. And I also like the title myself and my mom likes it. But yeah, I was getting a lot of like self-doubt before publishing because of that, but I was like, I'll publish it. But people love like uniformly. I don't know if they're just being nice, but they really loved the back copy of the book and like the overall concept of the book. I would show the title to one of them was like a group of moms. And so I showed this, I was like, okay, think about like what would make you read this or like buy it for your child to read. And they were like, oh my gosh, like this is like exactly the book that I want to buy for my daughter who's like a sophomore in college and like super stressed out about all the wrong things. And so that definitely gave me confidence. But then my other writer friend messaged me, he's like, oh my gosh, I love your title and cover of the book. And I remember in Stephen King's book On Writing, he said that when you get feedback on your work and two people say like one positive and one negative about like the same thing, then that disagreement actually means you shouldn't change anything because your art is like always going to be controversial, and so you can just neutralize it. I'm also open to repackaging the book, like doing a new title, subtitle, cover design, positioning in the future if I decide to. It took a month of like full focus to publish the book because I was essentially a one-woman publishing house. That was really helpful to remind me when I got overwhelmed is like I'm a one woman publishing house. So it makes sense that I feel overwhelmed, like there is a lot to do, but I can do it. The last part is the launch. Originally in my head, I had like all these like grand ideas of the launch, but I had to like really hone it down into like, okay, what's the minimum viable launch? Like, what are the few things I can do to get the most results without a ton of effort? For me, that was like sending out free copies of the book to people who had helped with it or like college students I know. So, like, all my beta readers got free copies, different like mentors and friends throughout college, as well as posting an Instagram post on my personal account. And I have like 1,100 followers on Instagram. The post got 300 likes and like a ton of supportive comments. I'll share my current sales numbers with you later. I think that from writing the book, like people are more happy to like see me that I've written a book, even if they don't buy it, because my current KDP sales, Amazon kind of like gasses you up with publishing and they're like, oh, you're the #1 new release in college guides, or like you're the top 50 college guide or whatever. But on the back end of like my Kindle report, I have 29 orders, but 20 of those books I pay for myself to gift them to other people. So that means that from 300 likes on Instagram, 9 people ordered the book. And from the people that have like messaged me and been like, I bought your book, I think I like basically know all 9 of them. And they're like friends and family that probably would have bought the book anyway. All in all, I've definitely lost money on this book, and I'm trying to think about future marketing efforts. I'm kind of in between in my head of like, do I keep like launching this book and marketing it? And I definitely will. Like, I would love to like hand out free copies to students and do some more like marketing campaigns. And part of me is like, okay, do I try to do speaking gigs, go viral on Instagram Reels because I have video experience? Or do I take this as like a learning opportunity, focus on my business job coming up, and just be like really proud that I'm an author? The real answer is probably some middle ground. The book has like so many emotional waves of up and downs. Like writing a book is like easily the most difficult and transformative thing I've ever done. And I've done a lot of things people would say are difficult: triathlon, half marathons, business interviewing, college. Writing a book is just wild. And even holding this in my hand, I'm like it feels like I've written a book, obviously, but it doesn't feel like, oh, like I've written a book. Watching this in my hand, what I see is how much little daily effort towards something can compound into something so much greater. I'm thinking of back to over a year ago, just sitting in my dorm room for hours a day typing. And that just like emerges into this thing that I hold in my hand. That's like literally the best thing that I could have produced given my current skill set. And that's just the best feeling ever. Like this is like literally the expression of me, the encapsulation of me at this point in my life, 21, 22 years old. And that's just to say that I've written a book. It's like, it literally takes like the self-belief and the commitment of like, okay, I'm going to publish this no matter what. Ever since last September, there were obviously some like surface level doubts where I was like, oh my gosh, am I actually gonna like publish a book? But there was never for a second that like my deep inner belief ever thought that I would let the book go unpublished. Even during those 6 months of abandoning the book and working on like inner queer self-acceptance, I always knew like, okay, eventually I'll circle back to the book. And even if I just publish like the shitty first draft that I shared with my beta readers, I will publish this book. It's honestly the self-belief is for any goal, just like the commitment, just deciding to do something and sticking through the hard things with it. I truly believe is what makes us achieve things more than anything else. Like more than luck, more than like some X factor. It's literally just the decision. And I think we're capable of like so much more than we think of if we just commit to like the boring work, to the emotional ups and downs, and you have a bigger goal to center yourself towards. That's my inspirational speech. So now I want to talk a little bit about AI and then end off with things that I would change about writing future books. Writing the first draft, I didn't use AI at all. It wasn't like a moral stance or anything. Like I just genuinely didn't use it for creativity. And I'd use Chris as a writing coach, which was awesome. But then around February, as I was polishing up the first draft, I started getting curious about how I can use AI as like a creative partner. AI did not generate any of the content in my book, but sometimes I would copy and paste a chapter and be like, okay, give me like structural feedback on this. The feedback was shit. Do yourself a favor and hire a human editor, please. I did find it quite helpful in the publishing process, so especially like launch strategy and cover design. For titles, I thought it was like pretty bad at coming up with titles and subtitles. But for cover design, it would help me just brainstorm like a ton of things, or I would even like upload the cover file, like the art file, and be like, okay, like what can I improve about this? And it would give like pretty good advice, as well as the launch strategies, just prioritizing like, okay, like what's actually important here and what's a distraction. I like using a like Socratic questioning type of AI, so where AI is not actually giving you the answers, but you basically type like, okay, this is a problem I'm struggling with. Ask me 10 to 15 questions one by one through Socratic questioning to blank, so help me uncover like some insight or like solution that I'm not seeing, because then you're still like actually like thinking and connecting things in your brain too. Finally, I always say that this book is the first book I've published, because even though it's crazy, like I would love to write more books in the future. So what would I change that I learned about this that I would implement for future books? The first one is that I think I would seriously look into traditional publishing, or at least allocate a significant budget of probably close to $10,000 to hire professional help from editors, from designers, from marketers to make that book the best thing possible. The second one is that I think I would write the entire first draft of the manuscript myself. I don't know if this sounds like insane even while I'm saying it, and not sure with anyone for feedback, but just do like self-editing, print it out, read it, give it time to marinate, and then send it to a professional editor who's like someone I've vetted, someone who's great at writing in the style that I hope to emulate, just to preserve like more of my own voice and mission without diluting it of like, oh, what are readers gonna think about this? Like to an extent, you need to market the book, but then it also needs to be like your unique expression. Dude, I feel so weird. I'm not trying to give book advice. Like this is just me sharing what I've learned. I'm a self-published author with 9 sales of my book that are not ones I bought myself. I spent over $1,000 on this, and then also gave up like probably $5,000 to $10,000 in like opportunity costs of my time by not working a part-time job and focusing on writing. And then the third ways are like how I've changed as a writer throughout this. I absolutely hate reading like frameworks and jargon. Like I love reading people's personal experiences, and that whole meme of like, oh, this is a book that can be turned into a blog post. Like I absolutely hate that, bro. Like tell me like your personal stories, what matter to you. And my reading taste has also just completely transformed. These are some of the best books that I've read in the past few months, and it's honestly to the point where I'll read like the first paragraph of a book I'm interested in, and I'm starting to get like the spidey sense or whatever, like the sixth sense of like, oh my gosh, like this author is amazing, I want to read it. Even if I can't articulate yet like why the writing is so good, I think I want to get better at like writing analysis and like implementing more of my taste and stuff. I've become like very particular about writing quality, and even if a book's content seems interesting, but the writing quality is just like repetitive or like meandering or purple prose, like I literally cannot force myself to finish that book. And I also don't really read fiction anymore. Like I'm obsessed with like nonfiction, especially creative nonfiction and memoirs, which makes sense because that's like the style I write in and hope to write in. If you're watching this and you're a writer, I would love to hear like what topics you write about, what got you interested in writing a book or watching this video. If you also have any advice about like book marketing or launches, I would love to hear it. I'll put the link to buy this in the description if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm really excited for the journey ahead.